Advocates here, and I am here tonight to discuss Trump's new Board of Peace. We don't know too much about it yet, but more importantly, I'm tying it into this discussion I've been having about our NATO allies here on this channel now for quite a while, because rightfully so, NATO allies are now squirming quite a bit at this new Trump Board of Peace proposition that's being presented to the world. I'll get to that at the very end, but what I really want to discuss and start with is the history of NATO and why NATO is no longer in the good graces of so many of us Americans. On top of that, why it's time for us to leave NATO altogether. And this is something I've been advocating for quite a few weeks. It's very controversial to say, and I understand why it's controversial to say, and I think there's some fair points and fair criticisms to be made when it comes to arguing against the idea of leaving NATO. But you have to really take a look at NATO as a whole. You have to understand the history of NATO, and you really have to take a look at the patterns that have been presented to us by our NATO allies to understand why we're no longer suited for them. They're no longer suited for us is really what it comes down to. And so understanding the history of NATO goes as this. We go back in time to April 4th, 1949, I believe is the date. That was the creation of NATO. NATO was created as a mercy to many European countries. And of course, this was after World War II, where Europe was completely decimated. Their societies were gone. Their economy was in the toilet, and they were war-torn nations, victims of world wars, 2 world wars. And so there were looming threats. Joseph Stalin, Russia, the Soviet Union Empire was knocking on Europe's door, seeking to take advantage, and you can't even blame them from a strategical standpoint. Russia knew that Europe was left defenseless and wide open, ready to be absorbed. And that's exactly what Russia wound up doing, and that's why NATO was formed. NATO was formed to be anti-Russian. Our European allies begged America. They begged us for defense. They said, we can't defend against Russia after these world wars. We have no defense. We have no strength left in us. Our economies are gone. They're in the toilet. Our society has crumbled, and Russia is going to conquer us. Russia will sweep all the way through us to the British Channel if we don't have your support. So we said, okay, that's it. 12 original founding members of NATO came together, and NATO was created. That's what it was all about. And even at that time, the first Supreme Commander of NATO was General Dwight Eisenhower, who, of course, was the D-Day hero. And General Eisenhower, at the time of the creation of NATO, just about 2 years after its creation, in fact, stated that NATO was meant to be temporary. Hello, Aaron. Welcome. NATO was meant to be temporary. It was never meant to have gone on as long as it has already. General Eisenhower deliberately stated in 1951 that if NATO was around past 10 years after its inception, that it would ultimately be deemed a failure. This is the words of General Eisenhower. And so what winds up happening very quickly after the creation of NATO is what we now refer to as the Korean War. And what wound up happening during the Korean War was a combination of quite a few different geopolitical things. Moscow was kind of testing NATO. On top of that, of course, we have North Korea that was deliberately invading South Korea. And this was the true test to our NATO allies. They sat back and they watched and they observed what our response was going to be. They wanted to see just what the United States was made of. This was going to prove to them one way or another whether or not we would actually come to the aid of our NATO allies should Russia decide to invade, or if it was going to be a dud. And America responded. America answered the call in the form of 36,000 lives, by the way. We defended South Korea, which to this day remains sovereign and apart from North Korea, proving to NATO that we were valuable, proving to them that we would come to their aid should Russia decide to do something similarly to Europe. I see some likes coming in, some views. Please, if you feel so kindly, give a like to the stream. It truly does help. Feel free to chat down below. I'm kind of using this to create a video and go on a monologue here. But if I see some compelling chats, I will kind of take a break and pause to answer any chats that come in. Also, be sure to subscribe to American Advocates right now if you're an America First American Advocate. Anyways, as I was saying, This Korean War really startled our European allies regardless. We responded in good faith. We defended South Korea. We proved to the world we were a force to be reckoned with to some degree. We at least proved that we would come to the aid of countries if their sovereignty was on the line. However, Europe was so startled by the Korean War that they begged us for more help. NATO was already formed at this point in time. Hello, everyone. I like this guy already. Thank you, Jamaine Events. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. Be sure to subscribe to the channel right now. Check out my videos when you get a chance. I've been going hard now for almost a year on this channel. We got to start putting America first. That's why I created this channel. Anyways, in the 1950s, after the Korean War, Europe was panicking. They saw the Korean War. They thought, this is it. Russia's going to evade us any second now. Please, America. NATO's already formed, but please help us even more. We respond to them as well. We truly are such a benevolent empire, America. We truly are. I say this all the time. I know it upsets the liberals, which is why I love to say it even more. I liked and subscribed. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate you. We truly are benevolent, though. And we said, don't worry, Europe. We will help you. We will make sure Russia cannot invade you. We will help you avoid a war. Just focus on rebuilding your society, your economy, and focus on ramping up your own defense. By 1953, the United States was spending roughly 13% or more of its total GDP towards defending Europe. We armed them with nuclear warheads. We sent those overseas to them. By 1953, we were doing all of this throughout the 50s. We started creating military bases the size of small cities, fortifying it with tens of thousands of United States military soldiers, making sure that Europe felt nice and comfortable. And they did. They took notice of this. And I'm sure they were thankful at the time even. I'm sure at that time, at least, unlike today, I'm sure NATO was thanking us on an annual basis. And rightfully so. We deserved, at the very least, a thank you for that. But this also what wound up fortifying the position that NATO's in now, where they're essentially a parasite. NATO countries are parasitic to the United States because in the 50s, when we started doing this, they took note of it. And they realized with us establishing a presence there that we did, all these military bases, all of these soldiers, sending nuclear warheads over there, and basically threatening Russia with nuclear warheads to the point where Russia realized we can't take any more of Europe. If we do, America will literally eviscerate us nuclearly. They realized this, NATO, and so they decided, well, since America's here, since they have such a strong military presence at our borders defending us, and since the goal of NATO is to allow us to rebuild our societies and our economy, then why would we continue putting in all of our money towards our own national defense? America's got us covered. And so this became the main thought process throughout the 50s and into the 60s, where slowly you saw our NATO allies contribute less and less towards their own national defense and instead reallocate those funds towards creating their now what we call perfect socialist societies, which all of these, of course, cutesy gay Europeans like to flaunt in our face all over social media. Oh, you don't have free healthcare over there in America? What the fuck is going on? You guys are capitalistic, though. I thought capitalism's perfect. They have no fucking clue why their societies work so well. They don't know their own history. The European education system currently is a disgrace. It doesn't teach them any of this. Worse yet, they feed them anti-American propaganda. Boycott Walmart. I could get behind that. Worse yet, they feed them anti-American propaganda. They don't teach them why we were so important to them. I mean, most Europeans, they don't get it at all. They just don't understand. And throughout the 50s and 60s, this was key to them, where they decided we don't need to defend ourselves. America's here. Let's just build up our own society. Let's create the perfect utopia, essentially. And that's what they did. And this wound up going on up until about 1966, where we saw an even more disgusting display from our own NATO allies in the form of France. Their president at the time, Charles de Gaulle, was elected, and he decided in 1966 that, well, NATO's great, but we don't like all of this American occupation. We don't like this United States dominance that we're witnessing emerge over here in the old world in the East. We don't even like being subjugated in the NATO command integration, the NATO military integration command, which is what it is. It's basically an integration of military under the command of a bunch of different countries. President Charles de Gaulle decided, we don't want that. We don't want this United States presence. So you have 1 year to withdraw all of your soldiers. He gave us 1 year. Now, keep in mind, France had to be liberated twice. And the United States was the main component in France's liberation each time. In fact, we liberated them in the form of giving tens of thousands of our United States soldiers lives to do so. And all it took was to be removed from that situation for about, 22 years or so, 44 to 66, for them to have basically completely forgotten that, take us for granted, disregard the sacrifice, and decide, fuck you, America, get out of our country. You're not useful to us anymore. We don't want your presence here. Thanks for your service, I guess, but leave. And so we did, foolishly. This is part of the problem with the United States. We've had a lot of weak leadership, and we haven't had a lot of firm leaders running this country where we don't tolerate this bullshit. Instead, we decided to. And so we pulled out 30,000 soldiers. In fact, at the time, our Secretary of State, I believe it was, I can't remember his first name, Runce or something like that. He even sarcastically responded to the French president's request by asking if we should also remove the dead soldiers that are buried under the white crosses in France from D-Day. Of course, that was met with silence because there's no real appropriate answer to that, and it made the strong point that they were completely disregarding the sacrifice that we made just 20 years prior. So, Hectic TK says Venezuela is going to be another Iraq. I don't know about that. We'll see. Anyways, we listen, we pull out, and this was ultimately, I got to hand it to the French president. This was actually smart of President Charles de Gaulle at the time because Article 5 of NATO, he recognized that as the ultimate loophole. France and their president, Charles de Gaulle, took a look at NATO and Article 5 in the treaty, and they said, well, with Article 5, America's already on the hook to defend us should Moscow decide to invade us. And so now what's going on here is they have all these military soldiers here to prevent an invasion, but it also occupies our countries. It also establishes a U.S. dominance in our country that we don't want. Truthfully, we can force those U.S. soldiers to leave our country, and if Moscow decides that that's a weakness and invade, those U.S. soldiers have to come right back and give their lives to defend us under Article 5 of NATO. So why the fuck are they here? And it's honestly a fair question to ask. Truthfully, in my opinion, this is when NATO should have ended because at the time, the French president, Charles de Gaulle, had a vision for Europe, for the European region, and France specifically. His vision was to detach itself from the United States dominance, which sounds scary, I guess, but his vision was to ultimately build a Eurocentric defense force with France at the center of it. France, of course, be in command of this hypothetical defense force. And looking back on it, of course, with the benefit of hindsight, that should have been the opportunity that we took as America. Going back to General Eisenhower's quote, if NATO goes on for more than 10 years, it's ultimately a failure. This French president was doing this in 1966. NATO was formed in 1949. So it had already been, 17 years? It had already gone on too long. And so we should have said, you know what? You're right. We're pulling out our forces. We're actually going to close down our military bases too. You guys got this. NATO needs to end anyway now. It was only supposed to be a 10-year event. You guys should be more than well off, more than capable of defending yourselves from Russia. But the truth of the matter is, like I already explained in the 50s and 60s, because of how they realized we were defending them so much, they weren't well off. They weren't capable of defending themselves from Russia. Not all of the countries were, at least, because they had already realized in the 50s, the decade prior, that we had such a strong military presence there that Russia couldn't touch them so long as we remained there. So they weren't allocating any of their funds or most of their funds at all towards their own military defense. Instead, they had reallocated it towards building their perfect society and fortifying and increasing the strength of their economy. So they weren't. So we had to actually stay. We left France, but we didn't leave NATO. NATO didn't dismantle, and we continued being used all the way through the Cold War. Why do you have military bases across the world? It's because of NATO. It's the agreement. We were begged. I'm going to say Thriller Forever, 93, 95. We were practically begged by most of these countries to create these military bases, to establish a dominant U.S. military presence to protect them. And the topic of this video, of course, is NATO. They begged us. This was after World War II. They needed us. Russia was knocking on their doorstep. Russia was already trying to absorb most of Europe at that point in time. They smelled weakness. Russia was like a shark smelling blood in the water after World War II. None of Europe would have been able to defend itself from Russia if it were not for NATO and if it were not for those military bases all across the world, where we now currently, to this date, we have over 100,000 United States military soldiers stationed, spread across about 100 military bases in Europe. That's why we have most of these bases there. We spend the most money on NATO yearly, says Joshua Tift, 4640. Yeah, we spend tens of billions of dollars annually on NATO currently. It's time we leave it, and that's why I'm making this video, to explain that. Anyways, 1966, after that whole French incident, after we're treated absolutely like shit, despite everything we had been doing for NATO allies for the past 17 years, the Cold War limps on from 1966 to about 1989, during which, at points in time, by the way, it's not like our presidents aren't seeing this. They're not. It's not that they're blind to the fact that our NATO allies are taking advantage of. Several points in time, from the 50s all the way through the 80s, different world leaders, different American leaders, I should say, do rise up, and they do call our NATO allies out for not contributing enough money towards their defense budget. Because you see, the first main point of NATO, like I said, was to help our NATO allies rebuild their society, their countries, and their economy. But the second main point was for them to allow themselves to build up enough of a defense force to eventually stand on their own, to defend themselves. That was the second point. Those 2 points together were the whole point of NATO. What wound up happening, like I said, is they became parasites. They're parasitic to America. They're leeches. And so our presidents have been calling out NATO for decades now. And the pattern of NATO is the main reason why I think in this day and age, it's time to leave them. You need to recognize the pattern of NATO. Each time one of our American presidents, leaders in our nations called out NATO for skimping out on their defense budget to create their perfect socialist societies, they were met with smiles and apologies even. Yeah, you're right. You really are right. We do need to work on our defense budget more. We'll pledge more money this year. We promise. Over the next 4 years, we'll pledge blah, blah, blah amount of money. Every single fucking time. That's how our leaders were met when we were called out on it. President Nixon threatened at one point to withdraw all of our soldiers, to leave. He was like, you know what? You're taking advantage of us too much. We're withdrawing all of our soldiers. They said, no. Okay, we promise. This time we'll do it. We'll actually start funding our own defense. We promise. Nothing. They flew back home to their countries, and they contributed nothing to their own defense. And this went on throughout the entire Cold War. And because America is such a benevolent empire, we tolerated it. We just said, you know what? They're our allies. They went through World War II. We're going to keep them safe. We'll protect them from big bad Russia. Now it's 1989. And the Soviet Union is collapsing. We're watching literally citizens take hammers to the walls in Berlin. Everything's being torn down. And this is now, if NATO wasn't going to end in 1966, when the French president literally kicked us out of France and wanted to build their own Eurocentric defense force, if it wasn't going to end there, which in my opinion it should have, 1989 or 1991, when the Soviet Union's decline and fall was finalized, that would have been the time frame for NATO to truly have ended. NATO was created to stop Russia from taking Europe. Russia, the big bad Soviet Union empire of Russia, literally was over with. It ended in 1989. It was pretty much done in 1991. It had split into like 15 small, powerless empires. America was last to join both wars. So, we needed Charlie Kirk as president. I didn't mind Charlie Kirk. I'm not a massive Charlie Kirk fan, though. Little too focused on things that I'm not focused on. We spend $968 billion on NATO yearly, says Joshua Tift. That is disgusting. It's not even tens of billions of dollars, then it's hundreds of billions of dollars. I haven't researched the exact amount, but it's quite a bit. We spend a lot of money on the Jews. We do. We do spend a lot of money on Israel as well. Yep. Yeah, and I'm a big Monroe Doctrine guy. I'm a huge Monroe Doctrine guy, And that was the whole thing, by the way. That actually, I'm glad you guys are leaving those comments. The whole thing about NATO was it was created in direct conflict that in what our founding fathers had like originally established. Our founding fathers, even before the drafting of the Monroe Doctrine, our founding fathers literally preached on the idea that we have two oceans separating us from that old world. And they preached heavily on the idea that we should avoid too many foreign entanglements and too many deep-seated alliances that would cause us to be way too involved over in the Eastern Hemisphere. When we have the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, we should be focused more on our Western Hemisphere. The Monroe Doctrine was drafted to really double down on what the Founding Fathers believed, and we held to that doctrine. We held to those beliefs like a religion up until April 4th, 1949, when NATO was created. The Washington diplomats at that time recognized that the world had changed, and they said, well, the oceans don't really protect us the same way that they used to when the Founding Fathers were saying this stuff. Now we kind of realize that there's fighter jets and battleships and rockets and missiles, and so we should probably establish some sort of a military presence over there in Europe so we can keep a better eye on Russia. That was kind of the compromise there, and I would argue that they got it wrong, those Washington diplomats. I think the oceans still do protect us. Certainly not the same way that they did back during the 17 and 1800s. I do agree with that. They're less of a protection now to us, but, you know, there's still a massive barrier for any of our enemies to cross without us getting advance warning. So that's that. I'm a big Monroe Doctrine guy. And, you know, we need to get back to that. I'm happy Trump is reinstating it to some degree. The Monroe Doctrine 2.0, I guess we're calling it, or the Donroe Doctrine, if you're the New York Post. But thriller not for the bases we spend money on in Europe. That money you spend on military goes back to big corporations, doesn't it? Who are Americans? Yeah, well, that is part of the problem. It's the military-industrial complex, obviously. There's a lot of profit in forever wars, right? So that's another big issue, and that's why the Monroe Doctrine, once again, is great. Had sail ships when Monroe Doctrine was... I understand, Chris King. I do understand that. I'm not saying that the Monroe Doctrine is perfect or that it's completely applicable nowadays, but it is pretty, it's still pretty applicable nowadays, in my opinion, to some degree. We need to focus much more on the Western Hemisphere, and I'm glad that we're doing that to some degree now. That's why I actually was in favor of the whole Venezuela thing. But let me get back to the main point here. The Soviet Union empire collapses. With that, NATO should have dismantled. That should have been it for NATO. Russia was inconsequential by 1995. I mean, it was over with. And by that point in time, by the way, 1989 is literally 40 years after the inception of NATO and 30 years much too long, according to General Eisenhower, who once again said NATO should only be around for 10 years. If it lasts longer than that, it's a failure. General Eisenhower also warned that if our allies continue to underfund their own defense budget, that it would cause the ultimate end of NATO. And it turns out he's probably going to be correct about that too. So 40 years after NATO, the empire's gone. By 1991, it's gone. NATO should have ended. But what happens instead? NATO expands through sheer greed, sheer European greed. Our European allies decide, you know what? Just like how Russia decided to try to absorb us after World War II, now that Russia is on the opposite end of that, now that the Russian Empire is gone, they're fractured into 15 inconsequential, insignificant empires, we should absorb some of those old Soviet Union countries right into NATO. And what's more sickening about this notion, by the way, is they've been undercutting NATO for years, relying on America to foot the bill, relying on America to provide all of the defense, and they're expanding NATO at the expense of America. They absorb more of these countries. By 1999, Hungary, Czech Republic, and Poland are added to NATO. And then in 2004, 99 was, of course, under Bill Clinton. 2004, under George Bush, the globalist, who I'm sure loved this idea, we add even more countries to NATO. And what winds up happening then? The borders are expanded. Who's covering that? Who's defending these new borders? We are. It's not the European countries that are aggressively expanding NATO. They're not putting in any money towards their defense still. They're still relying on America. They're putting all their money towards their perfect socialist societies. Did you know the average European Union citizen has 30 days of vacation annually with their jobs? The average American has 10. That's just an example there. They like to throw that in our face. They've been leeching off of us for almost 8 decades now. They, in sheer greed, expanded NATO at our expense, expecting us to continue defending them. And that's what wound up happening. And this is why ultimately it's time for us to leave NATO. We really aren't even in a position where we can afford to leave NATO. But on top of it, our NATO allies treat us like a doormat. They don't respect 7, almost 8 decades worth of protection. They don't teach their own citizens to respect us or appreciate it. They don't even educate them properly on it. And they've taken advantage of us now for years and years and years. Joshua Tiff 4640 says, do you know they have free healthcare because we America funds them? Yeah, exactly. That's something that RFK's been uncovering, thankfully, and that's going away for them, and I love it. We're starting to withdraw that kind of support now over there as well from a pharmacy standpoint. I love that too. That's a different video for a different day though, Joshua. I see a lot of views in here. Please be sure to like this stream if you agree with my standpoint. I will say this, if your hair's blue, if you don't know what gender you are, if you're 300 pounds overweight and you voted for Kamala Harris, you got down on your knees when you did so, please get off this video. Don't subscribe to this. Block this channel at that point. Don't ever come back. This channel's not for you. This is America first. This is for American advocates. So glad we are leaving the WHO. Yes, tell me about it. The WHO's another one. I've been meaning to make a video about RFK Jr. because he was one of the reasons I voted for Trump this time around. And I'm almost regretful in some ways I voted for Trump, but I'll cover that later too. But yeah, there's a lot that America needs to do. There's a lot. Just subscribe. Thank you. Thank you, Bazella Aya Roots. Thank you. Appreciate that. Anyways, back to the main point. The arguments for the United States leaving NATO. I'm going to dismantle those right now because these are the two main reasons that you hear why America, the joke of this statement, America needs NATO. America needs to stay in NATO. You can't leave NATO. We need NATO. The first main argument, let's just dismantle this one right now because this will take us up to 2014 and modern day. Well, America needs NATO because NATO exists in a way that really blocks Russia and China and Iran from global trade. NATO stands in the way of that, and that's what keeps Russia, China, and Iran weaker than America. Wrong. Give that 30 seconds of scrutiny and just a little bit of research, and you'll understand that that may have been the case at one point in time, perhaps in the 70s and the 80s and before that. But 2014, Russia absorbs Crimea outright and starts attacking Ukraine for the first time. How does the European Union respond to that? Or at the time, how do our European allies, how do our NATO allies respond to that? They can't. They can't stop it because they haven't been funding their defense force. And on top of it, the hypocrisy of the European allies. They grandstand against America. They've been buying Russian oil, which helped fund this Russian war against Ukraine. They're not blocking trade. They're actively trying to trade with Russia. Germany was helping Russia with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which ultimately, if I remember correctly, America had to stop. We blew it up. We sabotaged it. I think Trump finally admitted that just like last year after getting elected. We blew it up. But if it weren't for us, Germany was helping Russia build the pipeline, and Europe loved the idea of buying Russian oil, which, by the way, was undermining us, undercutting us, and helped Russia fund the Ukraine war. They pretend to care so much about Ukraine, our European allies. Oh my God, this is terrible. We got to stop this. America, do something, they say. America, do something. And they have to say that because they don't have a fucking military. They've been dismantling their military. You should see what Russian tanks look like nowadays. It's a disgrace. Germany. Germany had all of these tanks. They had like 2,000 tanks. They're down to like 300. It's pitiful. The UK's been following suit on this. And I know they did their Brexit thing, but the UK, they're all purposely like weakening themselves. They're just so dependent on us. It makes me sick. You guys need a knight or something, or a good king. Dude, I don't really agree with that. I think there's long-term downsides to being a monarchy. But sometimes I do, you look at the patterns of what's going on with America and the leaders of America, and you look at just how detrimental it is to have a new leader every 4 years. And it's like, I can see a strong point for that. More or less, a little side tangent here before I get back to my main point on leaving NATO. More or less, I do think there might be a better argument for expanding how long a president can stay in office. And I'm not trying to argue for a Trump third term, okay? I'm actually not super satisfied with Trump this time around. He's too focused on other affairs, foreign affairs, too focused on things that I don't think matter that much. And he's making some good choices recently, but overall, I have a lot of criticisms of him. But I would say it would be almost better if a two-term president, had 10 years total instead of 8, or 5 years per term. I think that could help in the long run avoid this kind of back and forth that we see, where other nations look at us and they do say that. They say, it's tough to deal with America because every 4 years you don't know what you're going to get. And I can see that point. I can really see that point. I can see a strong case for that. Anyways, leaving NATO. They trade with Russia. They don't stop Russian trade. So that's a null and void argument at this point. They've helped fund the war that they claim is outrageous and a disgrace. They pretend to care so much about Ukraine, they don't give a shit. And that ties in with the next main point, another country they pretend to care about very recently that they also don't care about. And the next main point is, well, NATO is what allows America to keep an eye on Russia. It gives us an advance warning on Russia's military activities. If they're going to invade somewhere, if they're going to attack the United States, it's important to have a strong U.S. military defense force on the European borders that border Russia. We can keep an eye on them better. I got one word for you there. Greenland. And this is why we've seen the response out of NATO that we've seen when Trump decided that it was time for America to acquire Greenland. Not the first time, by the way, Trump decided that. And not the first time we've seen the same NATO patterns play out, by the way, because Trump wanted Greenland in his first term. And when Trump started talking about acquiring Greenland in his first term, we saw the same NATO pattern play out. Denmark said, wait, what? No, wait, we own Greenland. And also, we really care about the sovereignty of the 56,000 ice fishermen that live there. You can't just take Greenland, Trump. You can't just own Greenland. Listen, Trump, please stay out of... Denmark basically said this. Please stay out of Greenland. In his first term, they said this. Please stay out of Greenland. We promise, we pledge to up the amount of money we spend on defending Greenland to put your mind at ease about Russian activity in the Arctic. We pledge from 2019 to 2023 that we'll spend $226 billion up there, Mr. Trump. Please don't take Greenland. And Trump, like every other American leader, unfortunately, for decades in the past, listened to the NATO allies who were making a bunch of bullshit pledges when it came towards putting money towards their military and defense. And what wound up happening? From 2019 to modern day 2026, how much money do you think Denmark actually spent up towards Greenland, towards their defense force? They pledged $226 billion. They've spent $2.2 million. That's less than 1%. And this is what NATO's been doing for years now. It's a pattern with them. It's an absolute pattern with them. And it needs to stop. It's why we need to leave NATO. They just take advantage of us, and worse yet, when we call them out for their bullshit, they lie to us. They make promises that they never deliver on. And then worse yet, when we call them out for not delivering on their own fucking promises, they literally get mad at us and they say, we're shattering the alliance. They lecture us on diplomacy and foreign policy. They lecture us, the people who are responsible for their very existence. They would all be Russia by now over the last 77 years almost, if it weren't for NATO, if it weren't for America being a part of NATO. I'm going to take a look at some comments. We got some comments coming in. I'll put a brief pause there before I get back to the main point. Dude, you have police arresting your own people. What do you mean? Hey, I have 2 words for Australia. yeah, Australia, not looking good over there. Fuck the Golden Dome. Fuck AI. I agree with the last part. The Golden Dome, I'm actually all for it. Keep Greenland frozen. That's gonna be a climate thing. Not that I'm a green kind of guy, but all right. I love ice cream. Matthew Queer. By the way, please be sure to subscribe right now to American Advocates if you're enjoying this. If you're an America First patriot, if you're an American advocate, subscribe. Give this stream a like. It truly helps with the algorithm. Now, this is why they're so upset about Greenland the second time around. They failed to live up to their promise the first time. Denmark did. They've only put $2.2 million down, less than 1% of what they pledged. And President Donald Trump this time around has said, you know what, that's it. We're done. We're done. You didn't live up to your promise. You're not following through. Greenland is so important to America's national defense. And you would think, by the way, on the topic of national defense, you would think America, after spending 77 years in NATO, providing national defense for our European allies, you would think they would say, 77 years of the American military protecting us. The least we could do is give them Greenland, honestly. We'll sell it to them, sure. And it's like we're not even invading them. We're not going to take Greenland by force. We're so benevolent as an American empire that we're offering to purchase it from them. And even then, they throw a fit in true hypocritical fashion. After 77 fucking years of defending them, they throw a fit and they call it outrageous. And they pretend all of a sudden, just like they pretend to care about Ukraine, they care about Greenland now. These liberal countries, by the way, that have open borders, believe all of a sudden in the sovereignty of the Greenlanders, the 56,000 ice fishermen. It's so important to protect their sovereignty. Greenland's its own country. You can't just invade it. You can't put military soldiers up there and take it by force. Meanwhile, France is being overrun by Africans and Muslims. So are most of the European countries, mind you. But let's just forget that that's happening. And so they respond with a military force, the European Union. They send military soldiers to Greenland to stop us from invading Greenland, something that we didn't even say we were going to do, and Trump has since said we wouldn't do. This is the thanks we get after 77 years of defending the European Union via NATO. Our military defending them, allowing them to not only underfund their own national defense, but reallocate those funds towards building a perfect socialist society. It's so great over here. I don't understand what's wrong with America. They claim capitalism is the best, but we live so much better. You live better because of us. It's because of America. It's actually taxpayer dollars that fund this. The government doesn't make money. It's taxpayer dollars that fund the government to then decide what to do with that money. And we decided at certain points, like in 1953, to dedicate 13% of our American GDP towards European defense via our military. And the thanks we get is they send military forces up to Greenland. They didn't even do that for Ukraine. They claim to care so much about Ukraine, yet they buy Russian oil, which helps Russia fund the Ukraine war, and then they don't send a single fucking soldier to Ukraine. They instead, what do? They beg us to intervene. America needs to do something. And of course, we don't want to do anything. We're not trying to die for Ukraine. They're a scum country. I don't give a flying fuck about Ukraine as an American. I'll just say that right now. Not another penny to Ukraine. This war needs to end. But they send their military to Greenland. And they do it, by the way, in two ways that exposes them. First and foremost, it exposes them as hypocrites because they despise America. The mask is off. All these years of protecting them, and they respond to our request to buy Greenland for our own protection and truthfully for global security. China and Russia are potential enemies to the world. And we say, hey, we've been defending you for close to 80 years now. For our own defense sake, we really need Greenland now. No, we send military soldiers there instead. And then the second way they're exposed is the pitiful amount of soldiers that they were able to muster up. The European Union collectively wound up sending about 50 soldiers. That's all they could muster up. Some of these numbers, when you look at individual countries, like the UK, sent one soldier. Can you imagine being that British soldier? They come to you and you go, hey, you're going to defend Greenland from America. Go up there and freeze your fucking ass off. By the way, you're going alone. Like, what the fuck? It's pitiful. And that's because, again, they haven't spent hardly any money towards their own defense. They don't have an appropriate military to defend themselves. They're still dependent on the U.S. military to this day. And then they have the nerve to grandstand against us on everything that we claim to value. All of our Western ideals that they're ditching, they grandstand against us on the world stage for. And when we ask for Greenland, they grandstand against us by sending soldiers there. And I went live yesterday. I covered this Greenland deal that Trump's worked out. I'm not happy with it. It doesn't move the needle much on the original deal that we had with Denmark and Greenland when it comes to our military presence. But there is some sort of a deal in the works. We will have more sovereignty up there, it looks like, and we will be using it to create the Golden Dome. And the thing is, the reason why NATO was so against this is because Greenland replaces them. With Greenland's ideal near central Arctic position, we can now build the Golden Dome, which I know people think won't work, but listen, it's all about national defense. How are you certain that it won't work? How are you, the average Joe, going to tell me that the Golden Dome won't work? What the fuck do you know? First and foremost. Secondly, even if the Golden Dome doesn't work as well as we'd like it to, having the sovereignty in Greenland that we need, which we're only halfway getting, having our position up in Greenland replaces our need for NATO. That's their second argument for why we can't leave NATO. You can't leave NATO because it allows you to keep an eye on Russia, America. You need us. Not anymore, we don't, bitch. If we get Greenland, it's over. That's really why NATO was against us. That's why we saw the ridiculous response that we saw out of them. It's not because they care about 56,000 Greenlandic ice fishermen up there. They don't give a rat's fucking ass about them. Those people are pawns in this game, this geopolitical game. That's all that they are. The real reason is because they know that we don't need NATO anymore if we get Greenland, and they're terrified of that because they've been taking advantage of us like the parasites that they are for 77 years now, undercutting us on the funds, not living up to their agreements to pledge 2% of their GDP towards their military defense by 2024. They didn't live up to it. Only the United Kingdom did. All these other countries didn't even live up to it. And then you have fuck-face idiots like President Emmanuel Macron gets up there and wears his sunglasses and talks about how, America's disgusting. He talks about how they want China to have an increased presence in their countries, these people. And that's ultimately why it's time to leave NATO. It's time. They don't appreciate us. They don't respect us. They should be giving us Greenland for free. Not only should they be giving us Greenland for free, but all of these NATO countries that have spent 77 years or 67 years perhaps undercutting their own defense budget and forcing us essentially to foot the bill. They should be buying up our national debt. We should be examining each individual country in NATO, looking at what they didn't put towards their own national defense, looking at what kind of a cost they racked up on our end using our military for their protection. We should serve them all a bill individually with what they owe us, and that should be bought up in the form of our national debt. They're so lucky. They are so lucky that boomers still control politics overall. They're so lucky. Because when the young generations get in this country I'm talking about, America, we're savages. I'm a young millennial. I think old millennials are kind of cooked. I'm a young millennial, and I see Gen Z out there, and I'm telling you right now, we're not going to tolerate this bullshit the way boomers play so nice. They grew up in the hippy-dippy free love era. Trump is a sweet, sweet old man. I say that all the time. It pisses liberals off, but it's true. He wanted to buy Greenland and pay each Greenlander that lived there $500,000. Why would we ever do that? We don't need to do that. We should just take Greenland. Now we're making some sort of bullshit-ass deal, the Trump-Greenland deal. Now the deal is, well, we can expand up there a little bit. We're totally sovereign where we expand. We don't need to ask Denmark permission now. That's the deal. We should own Greenland. We need to own Greenland. I'm gonna look at some comments here before I finish this up and go into the Trump Board of Peace. I'm going to talk about that briefly here. President Macron's husband. Yeah, that's why he's wearing sunglasses. I'm pretty savage. I bite. Hell yeah. Gen Z here. We are the savage. You absolutely are, man. You guys are the savages. I'm a young millennial, and I'll tell you this. Millennials are kind of fractured, I think. I see a lot of savage young millennials. I don't see a lot of savage old millennials. They're kind of like, they were the older millennials that are like in that late 30s and especially the 40s, like because millennials are now in their 40s, the oldest ones. They bought into the life. They bought into the Gen Xer and especially the boomer life. They're married, unfortunately. They're fucking married, old millennials. It's so retarded. And they bought into that life, and they're married, and they own a home, and they're soft. But young millennials, it's like, I'm still struggling out here, okay? I don't own a fucking home. Gen Z will never own a home if this keeps up. Like, we have to take our country back. We have to fix America. And the way we fix America is starting, we fucking leave NATO and we get out of the Eastern Hemisphere. It's called the old world for a reason. It's outdated over there. That place sucks. The old world sucks. You get all of these people out here. All these people I want to travel to Europe. It's so beautiful over there. I don't want to go anywhere. I'm staying here in America. I want to travel across America as I build my businesses in my real life and ideally build some wealth. I want to travel across America. I want to see all the different cities, and I want to see America get better. It's not over for us. Don't buy into the doomer black pill mindset that it's over. We're a declining empire. We don't have to be. And the only reason why we're declining is because of poor leadership and bad education, etc., and bad foreign policy. That's why the Monroe Doctrine's great, and that's why I'm looking forward, actually. Maybe this is naivete. It's naive of me, perhaps, but I'm looking forward to see what the young generations do when they get into power. I really am. It's just begun, says It's Tricky 12. Walk outside with no shoes every once in a while. We have a pub in the UK older than your country and still selling beer. Hell yeah. Hey, listen, I'm not like a European country hater. I'm not a UK hater. I admire people who are loyal to their own countries, and I understand that loyalty. And I do wish, listen, Europe and the UK are the reason why America exists to the extent that the people who founded the United States obviously came from those countries. And it's sad to see what's going on over there. It truly is. And so I understand the patriotism. I like seeing people flying the Union Jack flag over there in protest because your own government in the UK is forcing you all to take down your own flags in favor of Palestine or whatever the fuck is going on over there. I like that. I'm all for that. But what I'm also all for is for us to divorce ourselves from that Eastern Hemisphere more. We need to get out of NATO. And that's what I think I'm going to use that to segue into my final point here. This Trump Board of Peace. I'm seeing a lot of controversial mixed reviews on it, and I understand why. And I need to do a lot more research, I'll be honest with you. I need to research this a lot more, and that'll happen in time as we learn more and more about this new Trump Board of Peace. But one of the reasons why I like this Trump Board of Peace is it's because, say what you will about Trump, as critical as I've been about him the last couple of months, he has good instincts. At the very least, he has good instincts. It's oftentimes who he's around that causes him to suck so bad sometimes. But he has good instincts, and he knows. There's no way around it. We saw, the second we declared we wanted Greenland, we saw NATO grandstand against us, lecture us. They had the nerve to lecture us on foreign policy and diplomacy. They sent military there to defy us. And worse yet, Mark Carney, Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron all ran to China. The mask's off. These are not our allies anymore. They're only allies on paper. The mask is off, and Trump knows it. And this Board of Peace is basically Trump playing the political game and throwing a punch back, because who did we find out is invited to this Board of Peace just the other day? Russia. Russia is invited to the Board of Peace, and better yet, this is a halfway rumor still, but I don't have a problem believing it. Vladimir Putin is actually interested in being a member on the Board of Peace, and he's apparently willing to buy his way in using Russian assets. And that is a direct blow to NATO. That is Trump saying, I see you, motherfucker, NATO. I see you. The way you're treating us, we see you. The irony, hilarious irony, of NATO being created to protect Europe from Russia, NATO being so dependent on America to protect Europe from Russia, and now the Board of Peace being formed and Vladimir Putin being invited to it. I like that. It's time we start playing more like that. If it were up to me, it's probably a good thing I'm not president. If it were up to me, when when our NATO allies sent military to Greenland to defy us, I would have matched that response by pulling soldiers out of those European military bases that protect Europe from Russia. I would have pulled them out of there and matched it in Greenland. I want to see more like that. We're such a doormat to the rest of the world. The rest of the world knows that we're the world's hyperpower. They know we're an American empire. And they act as if we treat America bad enough, and if we beat them down enough with foreign policy and diplomacy, maybe the sleeping giant won't wake up and realize that they're 10 foot tall while the rest of us are 4 feet tall. That's like been the thing for the past 60, 70 years, and I'm fucking sick and tired of it. I want to stay a constitutional republic domestically. We deserve to have all of those rights and freedoms, those God-given rights and freedoms here as American citizens. But to the rest of the world, We're an American empire, and the rest of the countries in this world need to start treating us as such. That's where I'm at right now from a foreign policy standpoint in the United States. God's not real. Grow up. Listen, you don't even believe in yourself. Don't tell me who to believe in, okay? Hope they're not planning on turning freeloading off of China for the Danish people's sake. This is the thing. France, Canada, they're speedrunning their own destruction. That's what's going on with them. By inviting China, like, you only have to look at the past 40 years of American history to see what kind of an effect using China to manufacture for you and produce for you has. I mean, honestly. Anyways, the Board of Peace is Trump's punch back to NATO, finally. The punch back that they deserve. Because they've been treating us like shit for decades now. And we've done nothing but help them. It truly is despicable. And if you're an America First American, it should make your stomach turn. And fuck any piece of shit American traitor who tells us that we need to stay allied to NATO, who tells us that we don't deserve to be an American empire, who tells us we need to respect Greenlanders' sovereignty at the expense of our own national security. If you excuse me again, if you grandstand against the United States, your own country, you're a piece of shit, filth traitor, and you should get the fuck out of America. That's all I've got to say about that. Be sure to like this stream, like I said. Leave a comment on the video after the fact. It'll help out. Subscribe to American Advocates for more content like this. This is only my second time going live. This is a new channel, too. I'm on TikTok, American_Advocates. I'm on Instagram. I'm pretty much everywhere. I'm trying to get this channel up and running. The algorithm hates me. The algorithm hates this American empire talk. The algorithm hates that I love talking about putting America first. They hate all of it. And so it always punishes me. So please turn notifications on for when I post. Feel free to leave a comment. Like I said, if your hair's blue, you're 300 pounds overweight, you feel like a woman today, but you have a penis, then this channel's not for you. And you can absolutely block this channel right fucking now. Never come back. Just get off. Swipe off. Get away. I literally don't want you here. But if you love this country and you want to see us taken seriously on the world stage again, this is the right channel for you. All right, I'll finish. I'll take a look at a few of the comments here. Anybody got anything to add here? Liked and sub. Thank you, Lovey Brown. I appreciate that. Poor man. Does that mean P-O-O-R or pour out? It was an insult to the UK NATO soldiers what Trump said about them not on the front line and never apologized. We lost brave souls. Yeah, listen. NATO, I'll add this real fast because I meant to cover this, but NATO did respond in 2001. They did. But it's nothing like how we've helped them. Bottom line. About 1,000 Allied soldiers lost their lives in Afghanistan, but the response that we saw out of NATO in that Middle Eastern war was limited and restricted. Germany was imposing restrictions on their own soldiers where we needed those soldiers most. Germany said, South Afghanistan? No way. That's where all the conflict was happening, by the way. South Afghanistan? No. No, America, we can't help you. We can't help you down there. That's where the fighting's going on. But we'll send our soldiers to other parts of Afghanistan and we'll help maintain the peace there. And so, did they help us? Yes. Did some of their soldiers lose lives? Has NATO helped America before? Yeah, a little bit. But it's been mostly performative. And it's mostly been so that they can just wave around the American flag and say and show off to the world, see, we returned the favor. No, the fuck you didn't. Bottom line, no, you did not return the favor, NATO. You did what you were supposed to do under Article 5, and that doesn't make up for literally 77 years of America defending your sorry ass and footing the bill for your own defense. No. And don't even get me started on the Middle East war to begin with, by the way. I'm a young millennial. I grew up during that shit. I have Middle East fatigue to begin with. Not that that was Europe's fault, technically, but yeah. The algorithm isn't the only thing that hates me. Good. I'm not here to be loved by everybody. Certainly not by liberals. Not by liberal scum. Not by people that hate America. I hate them too. You are selling our what? Speak English. How did you lose soldiers? Who? Every non-MAGA live politically has a PG-1 line and says debate me. Every non-MAGA? Well, I'm technically non-MAGA. I think MAGA is kind of a cult, to be honest with you. I voted for Trump in the election, and it's certainly better than having Kamala. I hate to say that. But yeah, Trump's not doing... Trump has some good ideas, but his execution is terrible. I mean, it truly is. Trump is full of tactics and no strategy. I think ultimately he's a net positive in the fact that he lit the right fire. I see more young people now more than ever talking about politics and getting involved, and that's a good thing. And so I think MAGA overall will be a net positive, but I think, if I'm being honest with you, I've said this before, Trump is old, he's tired, and his foreign policy when it comes to the Middle East, it's just not there. It's not where I want it to be, and I think ultimately he won't get the job done. I just don't think he will. We'll look back on him as a consequential president, and I am grateful for him in a lot of ways. He's like an old-based grandpa, is what I always say about Trump. Like, he'll occasionally say stuff, and you're like, that was fucking hilarious, Grandpa. You're literally so right, Grandpa. That was fucking hilarious. He'll say the craziest shit, and you're like, yes. But then he'll go and do stuff that's just, like, outdated, like you're like, oh, I can't believe this, you know? That's kind of how I view Trump, just to be honest with you. I'm not MAGA, but I am absolutely pro-America. I'm an American advocate. America will outlive any president, ideally, and that's what we need to prioritize. I'm not loyal to any politician, but I am a social conservative, a fiscal conservative, and I'm loyal to America. I pledge allegiance to the American flag. When was the last time anybody did that? We need to bring some of those things back. We need to usher in nationalism, is what we need. Christian nationalism, for the record. Well, it's the people. DD 3814. It's not the country, it's the people. Correct. All right, let me scroll up. What about them Kansas City Chiefs? Ugh, yuck. We're all entitled to freedom of speech. That's a democracy. It's an opinion in the UK, but Trump is not good for USA. I like the USA. Okay. I mean, there's a lot of things not good about Trump. I'll concede that, but true patriots died. The flag was held up humanely. No retreat, no surrender. I love a man that can see good and bad. Pro-America. Pro-America. I can see good and bad. I got time today, 45. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. I got time 45. You're the kind of person I want commenting on my videos. I need more people like you. I'm pro-humanity, and I like the truth. What's good about the UK? Not much. Certainly not their food. Fish and chips, maybe, but, you know, that's a very Americanized kind of, like, fish and chips is, like, the only dish that's good there, and it's like, it kind of feels more American than anything. I'm an elder millennial, and I'm with you, bro. Thank you, man. Be sure to subscribe also. I'm Mured Phasma, elder millennial. Yeah, I'm a young millennial. I truthfully, I relate much more to Gen Z. I watch them and I go, I've always been like the Gen Zers, even growing up. And I always was like ostracized by my own fellow millennials. They thought I was like too harsh, too assertive. Like I was always making like sexist jokes and like, I don't know. Like I post like the most controversial Bible verses, like all of this stuff. I'm like a Christian nationalist. And it's like, I remember being a kid in high school, and it's like the way that they teach you, it's just like you should be apologetic for being an American. Your country is tyrannical. Every other country in the world hates you. The world would be better off without you, you know? Like, don't shove Christianity down people's throat. That's what we were told. America sucks. Don't shove your religion down other people's throats. And it's like, love is love. All this bullshit. And it's like, look at the world now. People bought into that, and look what's going on with our society. It's disgusting. It's full of filth and degeneracy. So it's like, did that kind of boomer ideology work? Has it made America better? No. The answer is no, it hasn't. God bless America. Amen. Amen, Squid Man. Protect the homeless. Hey, listen, here's the thing, too. Homeless people are homeless people. A lot of them have mental issues, but there are times where I'll see, like, a homeless veteran. I don't believe in the concept of a homeless veteran. I don't. And why are our veterans homeless? Could it be because America for decades has been too fucking focused on sending our money overseas to protect countries that don't even love us or like us or want to even be a part of us, that run to China the first chance they get when we talk about acquiring Greenland? Could that be part of the equation? Homeless veteran should not be two words ever put together, ever. You're always going to have homelessness. Some people are just not able to be rehabilitated. There's a lot that goes into homelessness. But homeless veteran? In what fucking world is a veteran homeless? That only is happening in a country that is sick. And it's sick because of corruption, and it's sick because of a misallocation of our funds. I'm not a socialist. I am a free market capitalist. But when it comes to homeless veterans, my God, that just shouldn't even be something that you hear. You shouldn't even hear those two words together. Shelter the American homeless. They think beans on toast is a gourmet bread. Hey, wait, I'm glad you brought that up, Joshua Tift. Beans on toast low-key looks good to me. I'm not going to lie. I'll probably lose all of my subscribers for saying that, but beans on toast low-key looks good to me. I would fuck with that. In fact, I've been meaning to actually just outright make that. Because I used to grow up eating pork and beans, and I used to eat it with a side of buttered bread as it was. And I thought that was hella good as a kid. So beans on toast, I won't shit on that one for them. But they have other crap out there that is just like, what was it, blood pudding, and everything sounds gross. Like they don't even name their food good. They don't even name it good. Trump's incompetence is why American farmers will go bankrupt. The EU ain't trading with us. Yeah, listen, the EU ain't trading with us. This is why it's so important for us to do what Trump's doing with the Trump Board of Peace, but beyond that, it's important for us to call a spade a spade. And I'm not advocating, by the way, for the United States to leave NATO completely to the point where one day we just pull out entirely. That would be completely unwise. But we need to recognize them for what they are, which is phony, fake allies. Global trade doesn't end necessarily just because you're not allied with somebody. I'm actually, by the way, all in favor of us ramping up more trade with Russia. We need to start treating Russia a little bit better than what we've been treating them. That's controversial. I know people are going to get pissed at that one too. But Vladimir Putin is actually one of the more diplomatic leaders of Russia that have probably ever existed. And we've wasted years squabbling with them over foreign, old world, Eastern affairs that really shouldn't be all that troubling to us. My opinion. Criticize me for it if you want. Instead, we've driven them into the hands of China more and more, and now they're partnering with China to bypass our American currency. They're buying oil from Saudi Arabia using UN dollars instead of American, and they're deflating our US dollar. They're attacking it outright. All over what Joe Biden did. Research that. That was Joe Biden's fault. But Trump played his part in that too. Trump sanctioned Russia as well. And I think it was during the Trump administration, the first one, we blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. But yeah, I'm all for it. I'm all for us expanding who we trade with, lifting sanctions off of some of these countries. We should obviously just maintain a presence in Venezuela, keep milking them dry for their oil. This is how it works globally. Strength is power. Strength is never a weakness. Kindness is the weakness. We've been kind. We've been getting taken advantage of because kindness is the weakness. Bottom line, our new allies, who, by the way, in the European Union, which country didn't send any soldiers to Greenland? Italy. Our new allies, not our NATO ones, our new allies, a new alliance we should form, Italy, South Korea, Argentina, El Salvador, and Japan. And I've been meaning to make a video titled this for a while now. Japan will very likely be the new Israel to us. The way Israel was our proxy point during those mostly senseless, idiotic Middle East wars, especially the Iraq one. Yeah. Japan will likely be the new Israel. It's going to be Israel 2.0 if China becomes the actual global threat that everybody makes them out to be. And I have a feeling that might be the case. We'll see. I think China's military overall is a paper tiger. But Japan is going to be an important ally, and they actually like us. Japan actually loves us. They want to do more business with us. So we need to establish new alliances, and we need to realize our current ones aren't cutting it, and they don't even like us. Hey, Keystone Liberty, I see that. I see Keystone. He's one of my longtime viewers here. Keystone Liberty, 1776. Israel has universal health care at our expense also. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't surprise me. We need to divorce ourselves from that old world more. And I'm not an isolationist. We need to keep eyes on what's going on there, and we should have some sort of a presence there. It would be unwise to not have some sort of a presence there, but we just went so astray with NATO. I really truly believe that. Hell no, beans on toast, you will shit and fart. Yeah, but hey, what's the problem with that? Sometimes farting can be strategic. Like if you're like with a girl and she's pissed you off, eat some beans and toast. You know, that's how you get back at her, man. But especially like I live alone. Like it doesn't matter if I shit and fart. I'm all good. I live alone right now. Beans go a hell of a lot better on cornbread. I don't know about that one. You're getting a little too out there now. It's hard to accept reality when allowed to frolic for so long. Is this Stephen Miller with a weird... Stephen Miller? I've never been compared to him before. Stephen Miller. I'll take that as a compliment, sort of. Of course you love Putin. Super anti-American. No, I'm not anti-American at all. I just think I think it's time we recognize that Russia is not the big bad threat that we made them to be all those years ago. They're a boogeyman now. They're just a boogeyman. They can't hurt you. They can't even take Ukraine. Like, this war could just keep going on. Ukraine is so inconsequential of a country and they can't even take it. They've taken some ground out of Ukraine, but these superpowers of the world they're overhyped. We're the world's hyperpower, and then there's countries that pretend to be superpowers, like Russia and China. But really, they're paper tigers. We just lost the Cold War. Shut the fuck up. Get off this channel, idiot. They shiver to the very name of our country. Hell yes. Long live the American Empire. Greenland, UK, Ireland. Don't forget Poland and Hungary. Poland, we'll see. We'll see. This is the most un-American shit ever. You're such a fucking idiot. America, fuck yeah. Yeah. All right. They have missiles, Putin, blah, 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 false, blah, blah, blah. A lot of idiots. Listen, a lot of blue-haired, 350-pound, tri-gendered idiots right now in the chat, some of you. Please, this channel's not for you, okay? This channel is for people who know what gender they are, who know that there's only two genders. This channel is for people that love America and believe in America. This channel is for people that want America to be successful, not for people who hate America while they live here, like scum fucking traitors. So if you hate America, get off this channel. If you love America, subscribe to American Advocates. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate all of you. That was my rant on NATO. Looking forward to this Trump Board of Peace. I think there's some good potential there, but there's a lot of bad I'm seeing too. I'll keep you guys up to date if you subscribe, turn notifications on. Have a great rest of your evening.